Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lockdown Coder, coming to you from Sydney, Australia. Lockdown in August 2021. Yesterday we did our second look at loops, and we did while loops in JavaScript. Today we're going to look at do while loops, and I should say again that I never use these, and I actually spent an entire career writing JavaScript without using these. So to me that proves you don't have to use them, but again, you may find a use for them. You might like them. Do while, essentially different from while do or while, because you do a certain step or a certain bit of code. You run a certain number of lines of code before you get to the condition to check whether you should carry on looping or not, rather than in a while loop where you check the condition first, and if it's true you execute the code, if it's false you don't. So I'm going to do something very similar I did yesterday or in the last episode, but I'm going to write it in a function today because it was potentially a little bit confusing, I think, not writing it in a function. And it also shows you how to use functions. Again, you can't get enough practice doing this kind of stuff. So it may be short, again, like yesterday. Let's see. So let's create a function here called, let's call it concatenate numbers. Can't believe anyone would ever want to do this in the real world, and let's actually pass in a number, and that will dictate the amount of numbers that will be concatenated. So if you pass in 10, it will concatenate 0 to 9 or something like that. Anyway, we'll see what happens. So first we want a result which we're going to return, and that's going to be an empty string, okay, because we're going to append everything to the empty string. And appending numbers to strings, as I told you last time, will coerce the number into a string, and it'll add a string to a string, which gives you a string. The next thing we want is a counter. So I equals 0. Why don't we pass in, let's pass in the number to count from. I'm making this up as I go along, honestly. I have no idea what I'm doing. So let's say, I think we can go straight into the loop, probably. So let's go do knew that happen. So if that does happen, just hit your up arrow again and do a shift enter. It's kind of a soft enter, and you can carry on. So do, we go what shall we do? Result equals result plus count from, and we'll add one to count from. Like that. And then we will end the block, and then you've got to put a while, so it's a do while. So do while so this is where I realised that what is my while going to be? Count from is less than what? Well, we don't even know what count from is, so maybe we should ask the user to put in a count to as well. Okay, then you don't need a num. So you can see my thought process here, can't you? In that there is no thought process. So we're counting from, we're counting to. So while count from is less than count to, so if you said concatenate numbers from count from is 1, count to is 10. So in the while we'll be looking at this statement while 1 is less than 10, which is true. So then it would do the loop again, and it would carry on increasing count from by 1 each time until it got to count 2, then it would stop. And what we want to do after this is we want to console.log result. Sorry. And I believe, I hope, fingers crossed, that'll work. So if I now do concatenate numbers and I say, well, I want to count from 1 to 10. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. Now, the thing about functions is, and parameters or arguments, in the actual function itself, these things are called parameters. Okay? This is parameter 1, this is parameter 2. When you're calling the function, it's just a semantic difference really. When you're calling the function, concatenate numbers, this is the argument you're passing to the function, first one, and then this, count 2, is the second argument you're passing to the function. So the arguments find their way into the parameters. The parameters are like buckets, like we describe variables as storage buckets. The parameters are buckets. So in that way, you pass the arguments into a function and they find their way into the parameters at place 1, place 2, place 3, whatever. And JavaScript handily tells you exactly what the function is expecting here. That's very useful, let me tell you. But the nice thing about the function here is I can count from anything to anything. So I could count from 99 to 120. And watch this. So, and then you could decide, you could go, oh, I want to format the function a bit differently because that really is kind of gobbledygook. And to do so is pretty easy. Pull up the function, and instead of adding count from, we will add I'm not sure that's going to work. Maybe if I do this and I put in brackets, I just want to separate it with a comma. So I want to say result equals result plus the count, the number, and a comma. So then if we count from 99 to 200, there you go, 99, 100, perfect. So that's do well, folks. That probably the first time I've used that in about 15 years, quite honestly. And I probably won't use it ever again. So I hope you learned something there. Tomorrow we will find another loop to do in JavaScript. Believe me, there's so many loops. So many ways of doing looping in JavaScript. We will look at arrays and how to loop through items in an array with an array object. Okay, so this has been the Lockdown Coder. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the next one.